now that my awesome idea of Agony Simulator, or whatever the hell it's called, has been out there, now I can finally rest on UCN. Now everyone agrees that Andrew's the one you should not have killed. It's all perfect. Oh, fuck. There's just one thing that, yeah, that's not gonna work as evidence. I've noticed a lot of people tend to look a little bit at this beautiful set of anime cutscenes from Scott Cawthon in UCN, the Toy Chica high school years cutscenes, and a lot of people tend to use it as a basis of evidence for there being a secret victim within the Five Nights at Freddy's series, and most notably being referred to that of Andrew. And as much as I find that concept to be very beautiful, I love the idea of Andrew being portrayed in some way, shape, or form within the games outside of just being the one you should not have killed. I'm sorry to say, but this just isn't the kind of hill to die on. I'm not saying that it's impossible, I'm just saying that from a pretty straightforward perspective, that just doesn't seem to be the story that Scott's trying to tell there. To understand what I'm talking about, you'd actually have to go and look at the FFPS ending. Essentially, in the real ending of FFPS, when we complete our little Henry speech about how everyone's going to pass on, it's the end, we end up getting a little cutscene that shows us a set of 5 graves, a mysterious 6th grave in the background, and that was the end. To me, and to a lot of other people, that represented the end of everyone. That was to represent that was the end of the original Five Nights at Freddy's story, and I still believe that to be true. However, what a lot of people don't know is that this isn't the last time that we've actually seen this very location. But for a second, let's actually go over who we're actually referring to here. See, we have a set of 5 graves in the front, which should be pretty easy to deduce, that presumably Susie would be in reference to the Chica girl, considering that's where the head placement is on the FNAF good ending. Let's look at the others. We have Gabriel for Freddy, we have Jeremy for Bonnie, and we have Fritz for Foxy. They all fit perfectly fine. However, that 5th character was never on the original good ending. However, in the bad ending, we did see that there was supposed to be a 5th person here, that being whoever possessed Golden Freddy. The Ultimate Guide would actually give us sort of an answer as to what was going on there, as it would say that the answer to who this 5th spirit was would actually be revealed within the survival logbook. By taking a look inside of the survival logbook, you'll end up finding a bunch of misplaced numbers that didn't particularly make sense, until you ended up taking all of those numbers and cross-referencing them with the crossword puzzle that's talking about "my name is," especially considering that throughout the rest of the book you can also see things like a grave saying "my name is," with it not saying who it is. By going by the crossword puzzle, you get the letters of Cassidy, Cassidy, essentially telling us that whoever was on that 5th grave, looking over to the 6th grave, some people might interpret this to be some magical 6th character, until they actually go and look at the 4th closet, which shows the Charlie grave, as in the daughter of Henry Emily, having her grave underneath a tree, most notably being one of the most important pieces there, which seemingly suggests that this 6th person would be Charlie, and then matches 1-to-1 with the events of Happiest Day as well, in which we have our 4 characters, Cassidy, and then the puppet, all 6 in Happiest Day, all 6 inside of this little cutscene, and the reason I mention it is because, looking back at Toy Chica's high school years, it kinda gives us a pretty easy timeline to understand. See, this little gravestone scene, as I mentioned, isn't the only time we've seen it. Not only have we semi-seen it with the good and bad ending, and with Happiest Day, we've seen it in a 3rd place as well. The end of the Toy Chica cutscenes. Essentially, the very last cutscene, most notably, happens to show this very same tree with Chica, who is supposed to represent William Afton in this moment, laying against it and saying that tomorrow is another day. To me, this feels pretty representative. The reason why is because this is the 7th cutscene, as there were 6 cutscenes that happened before it. 6 graves, 6 cutscenes. I don't mean to put put this in front of your face or try to point it out to you yourselves, because you're very smart people, but come on, we've got 6 graves, 6 people. It feels like those 6 people mentioned inside of the Toy Chica cutscenes should be about the 6 characters within these graves, which then creates a little bit of a problem, because as we're shown inside of the Toy Chica high school years cutscenes, is that there was a character before the 6 of them, which becomes a little bit of a problem, because we know, or at least it can be heavily theorized, that Andrew doesn't die until after the events of the missing children's incident. This is suggested by the very fact that Return to the Pit, the Into the Pit game, and the original Fazbear Fright stories all seemingly suggest there might have been a body at the bottom of the pit, and that presumably that is where Andrew ended up dying. We're also shown inside of these events in which we play as Oswald walking in on the MCI event and then going right back to the ball pit. It all feels very connected in suggesting that Andrew is inside of the ball pit. That's where his body was buried. The reason why I bring all of this up is because it would be a little weird to say that he walked in on the MCI and then also be the very first victim of Afton. It doesn't particularly make sense. So what I'm about to suggest to you is going to sound a little bit insane, because a lot of people like to discount it, but I want you to actually think about the thought process here. Essentially, we have our 6 characters, that being Charlotte, Susie, Jeremy, Gabriel, Fritz. That's the order of the missing children's incident. Oh, and Cassidy being the very last one. So what character would have possibly been killed before Charlotte? I know that there are a few people out there that do believe that possibly Elizabeth was murdered much earlier than the rest of them. However, it kind of gets a little bit messy, considering that the Funtime animatronics were built for kidnapping purposes, not to kill, let alone the fact that William Afton wouldn't particularly have a motive to pursue such a thing without having some sort of test run to go in the first place. Which I feel like makes the most sense to be a representation of Bite Victim. Before you click off and think that's all exaggerative and too far, let me explain. I'm not saying that William killed Bite Victim, although I do know some people do believe that theory. I just don't think that's the direction we're going. Rather, I think what's being told to us here is that the Foxy Hook, which is representative of Michael wearing the Foxy mask, causing the bite of 83, the death of Bite Victim, is rather just supposed to be a representation of the inspiration for what led William down his killing spree. To understand, it doesn't particularly show us Toy Chica going after Bite Victim at all. It's representative. It's to show there was a person that came before the rest of them. That person that came before was Bite Victim. I feel like a lot of people take things within the series a little too seriously or literal, because it feels very step by step, from my perspective at the very least, that we have Bite Victim represented by the hook. It's supposed to represent William's motivation. It's supposed to represent, hey, my kid just died, but shit's haunted now. I'm seeing shadows running around. I'm hearing Mike complain about nightmares of the things that his brother only knows. I don't know what the fuck that kid was on about, but clearly his death caused something, which then gives William the motivation. That's what sparks the Toy Chica cutscenes. It's William's motivation. He goes after Charlotte to try and pursue to find out what happened, to add another death to the roster, to see what'll happen when she dies. It's why Elizabeth isn't counted in this, because Elizabeth was never an intentional kill. She was never a part of the whole theory at all. Her only purpose was that she accidentally showed William that characters could possess the suits that they were stuffed inside of. Sure, you could argue that this theory falls apart by having no Elizabeth there, but again, from my perspective, it just shows that Bite Victim was the inspiration. He was the thing that started William's whole path. It wouldn't make sense for Elizabeth to be here because she wasn't an intentional kill. She was never planned on being killed. Charlotte was. She was the first murder. She was the wound first inflicted upon Henry. And then you have the MCI kids. It just fits perfectly, in my opinion, to make the most sense about what's going on inside of the Toy Chica cutscenes, over introducing Andrew randomly inside of this random cutscene. The whole point of Andrew is that he's forgotten. We're not supposed to know who he is. I feel like a lot of people forget that FFPS was the ending of the series. UCN is an additional add-on. It's not the end of the series. People get that confused a lot. UCN was never intended to exist. We were given the choice between UCN or the Tycoon mode, which means there's a reality where we never got to see UCN. UCN is an additional form of content. It's not the ending of the series. FFPS was. Hence, why UCN was the perfect opportunity for Scott to introduce the next character that would be incredibly important for the series, that being Andrew, a representation of the continuation of the story of Frights after what happened after the FFPS fire, essentially. Because that's exactly where Frights picks up. In which, after the FFPS fire, we end up having William inside of the man in room 1280. Years later, he's still being haunted by the one you should not have killed, by Andrew, and then him exploding and causing the events of Fazbear Frights. It's a complete connection, no different than the ending of Frights being that Larson gets his hands on the Remnant Pendant. That is quite literally the very end of the Fright series, in which Larson gets his hands on the pendant because Talbot says, I don't need it anymore. And then the very first story in Tales from the Pizzaplex is about a girl with that pendant. It's a direct connection. The whole point is that Scott was trying to show us his direct connection. The direct connection between the original series, which ended at FFPS, and the Fazbear Fright stories is UCN. It was never intended to be a FNAF 7. It was intended to be an add-on, an advertisement, no different than what we got now with Help Wanted 2, showing us the Tiger Rock plushie, and showing us the Mimic, and Jackie. None of that stuff is particularly important to understanding Cassie's story in Ruin. It's setting up the next story. That's the whole point. That was the point of UCN. That was the point of Larson getting the pendant, and then eventually this new character in Frailty getting the pendant. It's all connected. It's a straight line. And I feel like not a lot of people actually pay attention to that. Now, I'm going to end this off by saying I'm still sick. Go watch 14 Theory, because Nero and T-Dreads are awesome. I'll put it inside of the description or at the end card, and I'll see you guys in a little bit. Matane.